Shosar of Kohn Shlita. On Monday afternoon this week, I flew to Chicago to give a shiur and to visit our kollel in Chicago. So when I was sitting at the gate waiting to board my flight, I overheard a conversation that a young man was having with his girlfriend or wife. I didn't ask. Some relationship. The guy was doing most of the talking, and he was going on and on about the bets that he made on the Super Bowl and why he thought that they were smart bets. That this linebacker is going to get an interception and score a touchdown, and what the odds are. And he was going on and on. The girl didn't seem very interested, so I guess it was his wife. I looked around a little bit, and I found that if you want to place an interesting bet on the Super Bowl this Sunday, you can bet on what color of Gatorade will be poured on the winning coach. You can bet on which song Green Day will play first in the pregame show. That's the name of the band. This means that not just that there's a person betting on these things, but that there's an established market for betting on things as ridiculous as this. That is the state of gambling in America today. And that is not a surprise to any of you. When the topic of this Sichas Musa was announced as gambling and the culture of easy money, or something like that, whatever Eitan Laub decided the topic should be, somebody asked me why I would speak about this to the Night Seder Chevra. The guys that come and learn Night Seder are probably not the guys that are betting so much. My wife thought it was funny that there's even a concept of giving Musar to guys who come and learn Night Seder with Mesiras Nefesh. She gave me a pep talk right before. She said, "You go yell at those boys." But the Chevra that learns Night Seder are usually not the culprits on the gambling. So there are several answers to this question, even if we assume that the premise is true, of which I have my doubts. There are two answers that I would like to explore this evening as to why this is an important topic and why I think it's worth talking about, even if I'm not the one that chose it. And these two answers will make up the two parts of tonight's shmooze. First, it's important for Bnei Yeshiva to not only understand what's happening in society and in frum society, but to understand why the good things are good and the bad things are bad. We turn to our Torah, we turn to our Masorah for guidance in processing and understanding. Because if society believes one thing and our Torah believes something else, we will be asked about it. What's so bad about this? What's so great about that? We need to study to learn what's so bad and what's so great. And for that alone, it's worth it. But second, and I think more importantly, there are always reverberations of societal trends that make their way into the Daled Koslei Beis HaMedrash. Maybe nobody in this room is betting on the coin toss or on the number of Super Bowl commercials that will feature Peyton Manning, both things that you can actually bet on. I hope I'm not giving anyone ideas. But if the betting culture reflects certain societal values, you can bet that those values, those underlying values, have already been internalized by many of us. Now, to confirm the premise that the gambling culture has made huge inroads in frum society, it's really unnecessary because it's obvious and we all know it. But let me share with you some data points, many of which I've shared in the past. A couple of months ago, I was in a small community for Shabbos, and they asked me to speak to the local Mesivta Bachrim on Motzai Shabbos. And the Rebbeim in the Mesivta asked if I wouldn't mind talking about halachic shaylas relating to gambling because they were about to make a big push that the Bachrim should stop gambling. Within the first minute of my speech, it became obvious that every student in the room was involved in some form of gambling or another. A short while later, I was in Eretz Yisrael and I was walking through the old city of Yerushalayim, and a group of yeshiva guys, not from a yeshiva in the old city, so Nativ guys, calm down. A group of yeshiva guys caught up with me, and they asked me a shaila about a backgammon game that took place in their dorm room the previous night. There was 200 shekel riding on the game, but apparently they hadn't clarified exactly what the rules were. If the dice lands on one of the pieces, do not raise your hand if you know the rule. And they wanted to know, since it hadn't been clarified, who's entitled to the 200 shekels. So I said, wait, can we back up a step? Why on earth are you gambling 200 shekel on a game of backgammon? And they didn't understand my question. They thought I was asking why 200, why not like 100 or 50? You could play longer if you bet less. And they're like, oh, 200 because we're in like the Spitz Yeshiva, don't guess. We're in like the Spitz Yeshiva. So we do 200 shekel. What do you mean? They didn't even understand that I was asking, like, why are you gambling in your dorms at night? It got even more scary when I spoke about this topic in Teaneck, and a Ben Yeshiva, a genuine Ben Torah, asked me what to do about the fact that when he was in high school, he would gamble occasionally and probably used his parents' credit card to do so without their permission. While he would also, because he's a good boy and a Ben Torah, he would also occasionally serve as an aide on a get as necessary. Now, using a parent's credit card without permission for things that they don't approve of does not make you a gambler, it makes you a ganav. There is no machlokas, whether a ganav is pasul le'edus. So I asked our poskim, thank God they were mekel, about those gittin, but certainly it calls for a change, and Rabbi Jackter had said that he certainly is not going to take Bachram anymore to be Eidim on a get. But it's a hair-raising shaila. A hair-raising shaila. One father of a high school boy told me that telling his son not to gamble would be like telling a modern Orthodox high school kid that he can't have a phone. Which, by the way, wouldn't be such a terrible idea. But it highlights, in his estimation, that he would be the only kid in his class not involved in gambling. More recently, a young high school bacher in a yeshivish high school, a real mitzuyan, had heard me quote Rabbi Rothwach's first article on this topic when he said that if you aren't sure that gambling is a problem among high school youth, Rabbi Rothwach wrote, ask any high school student. And then for emphasis, Rabbi Rothwach added, you will not have to ask twice. And this young Mitsuyan came over to me and he said, I don't know a single guy in my grade, in my yeshiva, who gambles. I said, really? No one is doing fantasy sports for money? He said, no, everybody does fantasy sports for money. But the posek of the yeshiva said that that's mutter. So we've gotten to the point that putting money down on an outcome that you do not fully control, where you can stand to win or lose that money in a game of chance, is not even thought of as gambling. That's where we are as a society. So now that we've established that the problem is real, let's address both topics. First, what's so bad about it? And second, which values have we imbibed that have given rise to this scourge? Let's start with first things first. Why is gambling so bad from a Jewish perspective? We'll do very bekitzer. The Rivash writes in the Tshuva, Uschok bekuvya hine yesh bo isura d'Rabbanan. He says it's asur midrabanan, kedisa b'sanhedrin perak zebaruch avdalim beis. Va'afilu Rav Sheshes t'svir lehasam deleka asmachta bekuvya. And even according to Rav Sheshes, who holds that it's not asmachta, it's not gezel midrabanan, mikol makom davar mechuar umetuav umeshukatzu. V'rabim chalalim hipil va'atzumim kol hargav. I want you to pause and take a moment to think about how you've been trained to read a Rishon. How you've been trained to look at every word in a Rambam. How you've been trained to read a Rashba. A turn of phrase, an extra word here, an extra word there. The Rivash says it is not just mechuar, it is mechuar umetuav. It's not just mechuar umetuav, it's mechuar metuav umeshukatz. You can almost taste him vomiting in his mouth as he thinks about how to describe this permissible activity. And he doesn't just say it's gross. He says, Rabim chalalim hipil, va'atzumim kol hargav. It's left bodies in its wake, it's destroyed people, it's destroyed families. Ask any community rabbi and he can tell you stories. In addition to the very real possibility that it's halachically problematic or even asur, at the very least, when a person is gambling, one is described by the Gemara as doing something that is eino osek biyeshuvo shalolam. The Rambam in the Perish HaMishnayos writes Va'asr zeh lefi shehu misasik b'davar shein bo te'eles li'yishuv ha'olam. You're busy doing things that don't help anybody or anything. Umi yisodei haTorah sha'adam ein ra'oi lo lisasik ba'olam hazeh ela be'echad mishnei dvarim. The Rambam says a person should spend their entire life doing one of two things. O b'Torah, k'shdei tishlam nafsho b'chachmasa, either perfect your soul with studying Torah, o b'malacha, shetoelo b'hasmadas hametzius ha'umnis v'aschoros, or work hard and improve society and develop a work ethic and earn an honest living. Elo sharoi l'ma'it be'elu laharbos b'Torah, but obviously do more of the first than the second, as Chazal tell us in Pirkei Avos, havim mima'it be'esek v'asok b'Torah. That's how a person is supposed to spend his life, in activities that are beneficial, that are useful, that are productive. This is the paradigmatic example of an activity that is eina osek b'yeshuva shalolam. And by the way, if there's an activity that if you do it enough, you become pasal ha'edus, you probably shouldn't do it at all. Now let's move on to the second issue. The values that give rise to this terrible problem in our community and in our society. And I would like to highlight three such values. First, the societal trend reflects, and particularly in Frum society, a dangerous relationship with money. We are supposed to appreciate the value of money, we are not supposed to worship money, and we are not supposed to waste money. Somewhere between $5 to $8 million will be won or lost if an announcer during the Super Bowl says the words Taylor Swift. Why? I don't know. Over $100 million changed hands on Polymarket when February 1st arrived without the United States having attacked Iran. World events, life and death, became a game that people bet on because it's fun. These things do not speak to a society that appreciates the value of money. Judaism believes in the importance of money. Rav Shechter likes to point out the Chazon Ish in Yeridea, Siman Ayin Beis, who says that had society not come up with the idea of a currency, the Jews would have invented it, and that's not some sort of anti-Semitic rant. It's because it is necessary for certain dinim in the Torah. You can get married with Shava Kesef. You probably will get married with Shava Kesef, but you need Kesef to fulfill Machzah Shekel. The Gemara in Pesachim speaks of the concept of money being part of God's initial plan for creating the world, just like the Torah and the mitzvos preceded the creation of the world. The Gemara in Shabbos Taf Lamed Gimel tells us that Yaakov Avinu improved the lives of the citizens of Shechem by introducing them to currency, to a monetary system. Money is something positive. Without money, we cannot function. There are dinim in the Torah that cannot happen without money. However, money is a responsibility. Rav Shimon Shkop, in his famous introduction to Sharei Yosher, talks about how whatever money we have is given to us by Hashem to see how we will use it. Just as a wealthy person will invest his money with a financial advisor and increase the amount that he invests with that advisor based on how responsible the person is with his money and how successful the person is with his money, so too, lahavdil, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does the same with us. If we use it responsibly for mitzvos, for supporting Torah, for saving and doing other good things with it, Hashem sees that he was correct in trusting us. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky in Emes Liyaakov, Chelik Beis on Nach. Chelik Beis came out before Chelik Aleph. It's Chelik Beis based on the order of the Sifrei Nach. He writes that while he was learning in Kollel in Slobodka, he saw a din Torah in front of Rav Moshe Mordechai Epstein, who is the Av Beis Din and the Moritz Tzedek of Slobodka. When Rav Epstein issued the psak, the man complained that it wasn't logical. The story doesn't end the way you think it's going to end. The fellow who lost said, look, I could live with losing, I don't mind losing. But the logic of this psak, it doesn't make sense to me. Rav Epstein took him by the hand and said, you think the din Torah is about whether the land belongs to you or the land belongs to the other guy. You are wrong. The land belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. and he gave us a book to look at to find out who he wants to hold on to it for now. This is how a Jew views Dinei Mamonos. A Jew has to realize that just as Seder Kachim is so obviously purely Hashem's will, and so obviously in the realm of the Ribono Shel Olam, and relates entirely to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, monetary law is similar. It's not our money, it's Hashem's money. In fact, most yeshiva bachrim relate to religion primarily through the study in their yeshiva years of Seder Nezikin. We're the strange yeshiva that does Shabbos for some reason. So the first societal trend we've imbibed is to be wasteful with our money. When the Gemara says, you're not supposed to give more than 20% of your money to tzedakah, Chavetz Chaim says that the assumption is that you're saving the rest, not spending the rest on silly things. The whole point is Shema Ye'ani, that you might become poor. If you spend the whole other 80%, you'll still become poor because you'll have nothing left. The point is not to spend it on silly things, designer names, ridiculously priced coffee or whatever, because we just don't understand the meaning of money. Second, the societal trend speaks to a wild lack of hishtadlus and appreciation for the value of work. One was the value of money. Second is the value of work. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Eretz Yisrael, and I had the privilege, together with a group of Chashva Rabbanim, of meeting with Rav Meilich Biederman. Has Rav Meilich ever been quoted down here? Clock one. Don't worry, next Sichos Musar, I'm not going to fly in on a carpet with the Baba Sali or for braying with drunk horses or whatever. Rav Meilich told us a spectacular idea from the Chazon Ish. He said that there was some debate in the aftermath of the Holocaust whether we should accept war reparations, money from the German government. Some said, yeah, take whatever money we can get from them. Empty them out if you can. Take whatever. Others said, no, it's blood money. It gives them the impression that they get some sort of kapara for 6 million. We don't want to give them even an ounce of Yishuv Hadas. Chazon Ish said, leaving aside whether it's permissible or not, one must understand the nature of the Chiyuv Hishtadlus. All material success comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It has nothing to do with our effort. Elamai, we also have an obligation of Hishtadlus. And if we don't do that Hishtadlus, Hashem's going to have a taina on us for not even putting in the effort. Chazon Ish said that we have to do enough Hishtadlus so that Hashem is not going to say, come on, man, why don't you even try? How do you want me to bless you if you don't even try? Chazon Ish said, look, mutter aser, you could debate that. Is HaKadosh Baruch Hu going to have a taina on us that we didn't do the hishtadlus of taking money from the German government? Can't imagine HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to have a taina on us for lack of such hishtadlus. And Rav Meilich told us, Rabbanim from America, go back and tell your American balabatim this yesod of hishtadlus. That if you choose a profession that requires you to never learn or to miss lots of minyan, that is not the kind of hishtadlus that Hashem could fault us for foregoing. Hashem's not going to be upset at us for foregoing that kind of hishtadlus. If you believe that placing smart bets or utilizing free money given on gambling apps, and you know how to hedge it because you know a guy who does this for a living, and he knows how to bet on both sides and with the free money, so you get money back, guaranteed. All you got to give is your social security number. And you believe that's your ishtadlus, just stop and think whether failure to do this form of ishtadlus is the kind of thing that Hashem will have tainas on you for. If it is not, you're not making a penny more than you otherwise would have made. When we get the impression, or worse, perpetuate the impression, that money comes easily and in bunches and in sure things, we're doing a disservice to ourselves and to society. It comes with hard work and more importantly, with siyata d'shmaya. And third, and finally, the gambling problem in this country reflects how advertising and what we see around us drives our desires. It drives our wants and our needs. Rabbi Howard Zatzal used to talk about how in his mind the most sobering passage in Mesilas Yesharim is as follows. Hakavod hu hadochek es halev ha'adam yoser mikol ha'tshukos v'achemdo sheba'olam. Honor is the greatest motivator of people more than any other desire in the world. Without it, kvar haya adam esrat lechel mashiyuchal. People would just eat whatever. Lilbosh mashi ischase ervaso. We would dress however. Lishkon bebayish shetastireu min habagoyim. We'd live in a house that keeps the cold out. Vaya parnasaso kala alav. And we wouldn't have to work so hard. You don't have to work so hard to save. However, no one wants to see themselves as less than. I don't want to be less than that guy. How can I live one way when everybody else lives another way? That's what causes our problems. We have to be motivated from within, not from without. And we see the hasagos changing based purely on what people are seeing other people do. It used to be, when I was younger, going on a plane to Eretz Yisrael was something that rich people do. To be able to afford a trip to Eretz Yisrael. It's a beautiful thing. Then it became, which part of the plane do you sit on? Are you sitting in the front of the plane? Then it became, whose plane are you going on? Someone told a story of a wealthy man who never had to fly business once instead of private. And his 6-year-old son came on the plane with him. He's like, Daddy, what are all these people doing on our plane? If when we used to make simchas, you would hear a phrase and you would say, what's a party planner? We now ask not just, are you using a party planner, but hey, which party planner are you using? The whole language has changed. The assumptions have changed. Because we need it more, or because we see it more? On a different occasion, by the way, we can discuss whether following professional sports has ceased to be a healthy outlet for children. You follow the Max and you listen to Zevi's interviews, that's great. But the constant barrage of damaging messaging in following professional sports may have taken a real toll on Klal Yisrael. So the takeaways are, first, know that there is a gambling problem in America and that it has impacted Klal Yisrael disproportionately. The studies tell us, unfortunately, we have drug problems with our youth, not as bad as the rest of society. Drinking problems with our youth, not as bad as the rest of society. Gambling problems with our youth, worse than the rest of society. We're actually worse off because we have more money, probably. Second, let's reassess the values that may have crept in and start to appreciate the value of money. By not being wasteful, maybe cut one silly luxury from your life. Identify one silly hakpada that you have on something gashmi that doesn't even give you any more comfort. It's just silly. And cut that out of your life. Appreciate that ishtadlus is a hechitimtze of Hashem's bracha. And let's do a gut check to make sure that we look inward rather than outward when assessing that which we need.